Alright, everybody. This is the last Batman Arkham Knight video. For real this time, I swear I mean it. Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and I am no longer procrastinating at ending the Batman Arkham Knight series of videos that I have been playing through. In the previous video, I kind of sort of promised and broke that promise that that would be the last video. The objective in that previous video was to show everyone the Knightfall Protocol, go over all the side missions that took place in the post-game, as well as rank all of those side missions from worst to best. I was originally going to include my thoughts on the main City of Fear story, as well as throw out a reimagining a what-if scenario for how that game could have been different had I thrown my imagination into the works and rewritten the whole damn thing. But I found out that trying to squeeze all of that into one video was really not that feasible because I ended up hitting that hour mark. And then I went over that reimagined scenario and found out that, well, it tacks on about 40 extra minutes to the video. So rather than make one nearly 2 hour long video, I went ahead and made the hard decision to break it into two. This video is going to go over City of Fear, summarizing it one final time. Then I'm going to give my thoughts on it as well as that what if scenario I was describing. So let's go into it one more time. At the beginning of almost every single video when we were playing through City of Fear, I was updating you on the summary of everything that had happened up to that point. Now I get to do it one more time from beginning to end. What happened in City of Fear? Alright, the plot of City of Fear kicks off with the return of Scarecrow, who has been absent ever since the events of the very first game, Arkham Asylum. In that first game, Arkham Asylum, Scarecrow was ultimately attacked by Killer Croc and left for dead. Only he did not die, and it turned out he was just very heavily mutilated. After he tortured us throughout all of that game, well, we were not too sad to find out that he got attacked. It just saved us the trouble of having to deal with any more Scarecrow hallucinations. Until, Batman Arkham Knight came out. And now that he has returned for Batman Arkham Knight, he is threatening to cover all of Gotham City with fear toxin again. He's also teaming up with a new character, a villain that Batman has never fought before, calling himself the Arkham Knight. The Arkham Knight is also leading an army's worth of mercenaries into Gotham to help take control of the entire city and help them with their little crusade against Batman. And that is roughly how the game begins. In the early stages of the game, we end up having to save Poison Ivy from the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow as she is being held hostage at some sort of a safe house. We end up taking her from that hostage situation and then just locking her up in the GCPD. And then we go to Ace Chemicals, which we stop from fully exploding. And even though it still exploded to some extent, keeping it from fully exploding meant that the fear toxin was not going to spread statewide or further. It was just limited to the factory area. Then we find out that the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow know that Barbara Gordon is Oracle. That revelation is immediately followed by them kidnapping Barbara Gordon. And after that kidnapping scenario is when we get the B-plot for this video game. It turns out that Batman is still having some side effects from being exposed to Joker's blood back in the Batman Arkham City video game. This blood exposure is now causing him to lose his sanity, and slowly but surely he is becoming more and more like the Joker. The fear here is that he is going to lose his sanity entirely, and then just become a Joker version of the Batman, or a Batman version of the Joker. Joker Bat? Joker Bat. But the situation just gets better because we find out that Bruce is not the only one dealing with this. Turns out the blood ultimately got used on a few people at a few hospitals around Gotham or the world, a little bit vague, but in the end, 4 people got infected besides just Bruce Wayne. And now they are going through the Joker transformation. And being infected with Joker's blood and also exposed to a large amount of fear toxin is causing Batman to hallucinate that the Joker is still real and following him around throughout this entire adventure. Anyway, after Barbara Gordon is taken by the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow, we end up chasing them all around Gotham with the hope that maybe we can get her back and save her life. Eventually, the trail goes cold, and then we have to resort to beating up Penguin for more intel on the situation, since it turns out he is supplying the Arkham Knight's militia with weapons. Penguin's intel lets us know that Scarecrow had one more partner that he was working with, an individual by the name of Simon Stagg. Turns out Simon Stagg owns a bunch of blimps, so we go to those blimps, we break in, and we find out that the militia are also after him. So we are now tasked with saving Simon Stagg from the militia so we can get more information on the situation. The information we gather reveals that he was hired to build a cloudburst weapon. That weapon would be used to then detonate and spread fear toxin at an alarming rate and more effective than anything else Scarecrow has ever used before. But we also find out that he had no intention of ever giving this unique weapon to Scarecrow. He was just experimenting with the fear toxin and trying to find other ways of making money off of it. And since he was never going to give the weapon to him, and he was using Scarecrow's signature gas in a way that was not intended and that he never did disclose, finding out about that just meant that the Scarecrow felt he was stabbed in the back, and he was willing to kill Simon Stagg to get the weapon back and also stop all the nonsense of him tinkering with the fear toxin. Fortunately for Simon Stagg, we were very nosy, found out, and we end up saving his life. Even though we save him, that does not mean we're able to stop the cloudburst from getting into the wrong hands. That's right, the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow were ultimately able to get away from the blimp with the cloudburst. After they get away with the cloudburst weapon, they are kind enough to let us know where Barbara Gordon is. So we go there immediately to save her. Turns out, though, it's way too convenient for them just to give us the location. It is, in fact, a trap. She is locked away, and she is being exposed to fear toxin the moment we walk into the building. That fear toxin then sends her into a confused and worried panic. This frantic state of mind led to her shooting herself, and we lose Barbara Gordon very tragically at this point in the game. Losing allies and not being able to stop Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight is making us a bit desperate, and we are also starting to run out of options. So we go back to an option that we left locked up at the beginning of the game. That's right, we go and get Poison Ivy. Turns out she is able to resist the fear toxin, and she knows a way of producing plants that can counteract it should the cloudburst ever detonate. Fortunately for us, she agrees to help. So we take her to the botanical gardens so that she can get to work on that counteractive plant. While she's doing that, we just go and waste a lot of time, and then we find out that there is no cure for the Joker disease. We find that out when the rest of the Joker infected basically just kill each other, and in the process ruin our one hope of finding some sort of a cure because we thought one of them was immune to the disease, and it turns out he was infected too, and it was just a bunch of shenanigans, and we've been wasting weeks or months or more. Anyway, point being, Batman has no hope, all hope is lost, this really sucks, oh well, back to Scarecrow. Oh wait, we wasted way too much time and Scarecrow had the opportunity to detonate the cloudburst. Now Gotham City is completely covered in fear toxin. Batman then goes on a last-ditch effort to go grow a plant for Poison Ivy. That plant should get the fear toxin to go away. And wouldn't you know it, Batman is successful in growing the plant, but that does not mean everything is conveniently over. No, we have to go fight the Arkham Knight and destroy the cloudburst weapon. Why? Well, because if they still have the weapon, they can detonate it again, and we do not want to have to do this crap twice. Then, Poison Ivy uses all of her remaining energy to clear out all of the fear toxin in Gotham City. This last-ditch effort from her worked, but at a great cost. We end up losing Poison Ivy, she dies in our arms, and, well, the fear toxin is gone, but we are continuing to lose allies. To add insult to injury, we were not even able to capture the Arkham Knight after our fight. He got away. That's alright, though, we're going to continue on with the plot. From here, we figure out where the Arkham Knight and the militia have been hiding out the entire game. We break in, sneak around, and ultimately get into a fight with the Arkham Knight. Fight number 2 has a lot more development than fight number 1 did. In this second encounter, the Arkham Knight reveals that he is in fact Jason Todd, a former Robin that we thought was deceased. Long ago, he was captured and tortured by the Joker, and we believed that he had killed Jason Todd, but, well, here he is, so clearly that was not the case. Turns out Jason Todd took it very personally that he just got replaced and Batman stopped looking for him, so he wanted revenge and teamed up with Scarecrow. At the end of the fight, we end up winning, but we cannot bring ourselves to apprehend the former Robin, Jason Todd. So, utilizing this hesitation, Jason Todd is able to get away. We then continue to corner Scarecrow at the top of the building, only to find out that he was lying to us the entire time. Barbara Gordon was not dead. He was just holding her hostage. Whenever we saw Barbara Gordon die, whenever she was exposed to fear toxin, well, flip the situation around a little bit. Turns out Batman was the one that was exposed to the fear toxin, and that was just what he was seeing while he was hallucinating on the fear toxin. There is a lot of plot convenience there, but moving on. So this encounter with Scarecrow comes to an end with us getting Barbara Gordon back and saving her, but in doing so, we have to leave behind Jim Gordon, her dad, and Commissioner Gordon is just taken hostage by Scarecrow. So we trade one Gordon for the other Gordon. Not satisfied with just Commissioner Gordon, Scarecrow then goes on to also take hostage our current Robin, Tim Drake. With 2 hostages that Batman cares about, he is then forced to surrender to Scarecrow in order to try and save their lives. After surrendering himself to Scarecrow, it is revealed to the world that Batman is in fact Bruce Wayne. During this reveal, Scarecrow then injects Bruce Wayne with way more fear toxin than he has had to deal with throughout most of the game. This time around, he is hallucinating that the Joker is taking over his body. During this hallucination, he fights the Joker in his mind and wins back control of his body. This also cures him of the Joker disease purely through willpower somehow. Regaining mental stability at just the right time, Batman is then freed by Jason Todd, who suddenly has a change of heart going from arch enemy to ally. Once free, Batman is able to gain control of Scarecrow and inject him with his own fear toxin. Under control and hallucinating, Batman takes him into the GCPD, where he is apprehended and basically paralyzed in fear the entire time. The game then ends with Batman kicking off something called the Knightfall Protocol. What is the Knightfall Protocol? Well, it's basically just Batman faking his own death. He does this by blowing up Wayne Manor with him inside. The hope here is now that the world knows Bruce Wayne is Batman, perhaps they will leave his friends and family alone should they think that he is in fact dead and there's no point in trying to get revenge anymore. And faking his death is how the Batman title is hung up for good. Or is it? Well, we then have a time jump, and after that time jump, we find out that Commissioner Gordon is no longer Commissioner Gordon. He's actually running to be Mayor Gordon. We also find out that Tim Drake is planning to propose to Barbara Gordon. And then at the very end of the cutscene, we find out that someone new has taken up the Batman mantle. Not only are they taking up the Batman mantle, they're using fear toxin to really inspire fear in all the criminals around Gotham. Well, who is the new Batman? I don't know. They don't tell us. Could be Jason Todd, could be Nightwing, could be Tim Drake, could be pretty much anyone because it's ambiguous. And that is my very quick wrap up of the entire City of Fear storyline from beginning to nightfall. Now, trying to keep up this high energy announcer voice is actually a little bit exhausting, so I'm going to tone it down just a little bit and just, take it easy going forward. So, I mentioned a bit of a hypothetical situation about how would I change the story in the way that would make it more interesting to me. So, I'll go over that as quickly as I can, real quick. Actually, before I do that, I'll go ahead and say that yeah, my hypothetical scenario would never happen in a million years, but I think it's interesting. And even though I took the time to think of a different scenario for the story, I'm not saying that the story of Batman Arkham Knight is bad. I actually really enjoy it. It has its faults, but none of them are so bad that they ruin the story. So yeah, I think the story is pretty good. The creators did some interesting things with Scarecrow after the events of Arkham Asylum, and they had an interesting reimagining of Red Hood being Arkham Knight. Despite me remembering the game having mixed reviews back in the day when it was released, current ratings indicate that the majority of people have had a bit of a change of heart since the game is rated very highly, and I would say that that rating is really well deserved. It is not a perfect game or story, but it is really good and a lot of fun. As of right now, it is the conclusion to the Batman Arkham video game series, and I think they wrapped it up very well. It has been very fun to play it again and beat it entirely and record it. I'm sure I'll enjoy reflecting on the videos, and yeah, I'm just really glad that they're complete. Anyway, enough about that for now. The hypothetical scenario. So I'm going to lay out the key changes I would make to the main story for Batman Arkham Knight, and then I'm going to go through the events again, everything that happens in the story, and kind of detail how it would change, how it would be adapted to make my changes work within the overall story. The first major change that I would make is I would break up the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow team up. One of my big complaints about the Arkham Knight was that he was way too compliant with Scarecrow when his overall goal was to just kill Batman. I just feel like he gives way too much control to Scarecrow. And considering how much he wants Batman dead, he lets Scarecrow tell him not to do it way too many times. Now, they kind of remedy that later on in the story whenever the Arkham Knight starts to get a little bit more defiant, but I feel like it takes way too long to get to that point, and he's just a little bit too willing to sideline his revenge throughout most of the game. Now, don't get me wrong, it would make sense for him to comply with Scarecrow long enough to get what he wants until he eventually gets tired of his bullshit, or eventually he gets in the position where he does get to kill Batman. But continuing to put it off over and over again really doesn't work for me. Also, at the very end, we don't get a very good resolution to the whole Jason Todd and Bruce Wayne rivalry, how it all comes to end, and how they come to have a begrudging respect for each other after being at each other's throats the entire game. It's cool that Jason Todd chooses to save Batman, but we really don't get a whole lot of elaboration on his change of heart What he's going to do beyond being the Arkham Knight, just if nothing, it's left alone. He just saves him and disappears into obscurity. So I would still need Scarecrow to be teamed up with somebody because after all, there is the militia, and I don't really see Scarecrow as some great tactical genius. So let's have him instead team up with Deathstroke. It would make sense that Deathstroke would have a bunch of military and mercenary contacts that he could pull in to be part of the militia, and him being a tactical leader himself would make sense that he would be in charge. So yeah, that would explain the militia presence pretty well. And I think he'd be more than willing to take out a contract on Batman again because of the reputation that was destroyed after their last fight. So what about Jason Todd? If he's not part of that duo, what's he doing? Because I do want him in this game. We are going to make Jason a completely separate antagonist from the Scarecrow team up. I'd like to have Jason Todd taking on the Arkham Knight mantle if we really wanted to stick with that title, but instead have him killing off villains all around Gotham City. We could have him being shown as a major threat by seeing him kill off someone like Victor Zsasz. And then finally, whenever Scarecrow announces to the world that he is going to cover Gotham in fear toxin, it just puts a gigantic target on Scarecrow's back. The Arkham Knight would utilize this in order to use him as his signature kill, his showing that he can succeed where Batman can't. He can remove the villains and make sure they never hurt anyone again, instead of being like Batman who just locks them away for them to eventually get out and then do the same crap over and over again. He just puts down the villains. I feel like that's pretty on brand for a motivation, wanting to be a better Batman than kill off Batman and replace him entirely. That's really what he was trying to do in the early days of being Red Hood anyway. So rather than just continuing to reposition characters, I want to add one to the game as well. One that I think really probably should have been in this game and just wasn't. Now, back in Arkham City, Talia al Ghul died. Talia al Ghul was part of the League of Assassins, and we had to fight against them quite a bit in that game. Now, with her dying and then Ra's al Ghul disappearing after his defeat, the League of Assassins would probably be in shambles at this point. Now, Talia, in the comics, has a son named Damian. That son happens to be Bruce's son as well. She kind of does some questionable things in order to get that pregnancy to happen, but we're not going to get into that too much right now. Just know that Damian Wayne is a thing. Bruce Wayne has a son who was raised as an assassin, and he does not know he exists. So, with the death of his mother, it would make sense that he would come out of hiding and seek out the people he felt was responsible. And since Batman was there and unable to save her, he would probably hold his father accountable and think that he was responsible for the death of his mother and then want revenge. Now, with Jason Todd wanting revenge against Batman as well, it would make sense that he would go out and recruit Damian Wayne to his cause. They could work together and go against the person that they feel has wronged them both. Also, with the Arkham Knight being kind of a better version of Batman in the eyes of Jason, it would also make sense that he would want a better version of Robin, a dark Robin, and Damian Wayne could be that Robin. I also mentioned this a few times in my main playthrough of the game, but I am not a big fan of the Joker virus plotline. It is not a very interesting story for me. It gets sidelined a lot, and I really think it was just an excuse to get Mark Hamill back in the voice acting role of Joker, which I'm not mad at that. He's good at it, but it just kind of seems like it doesn't go anywhere in the story and distracts from what otherwise could have been way more character development for some people who really needed it. Also, there's no real resolution to it. In the end, we get a cool cinematic face off against Joker and Bruce Wayne's head, but what really happens? Well, he overcomes him mentally, and apparently being mentally strong cures Bruce Wayne of a virus, which makes no sense and is kind of stupid. So let's kind of meet somewhere in the middle here. Bruce does get hit with the fear toxin quite a bit in this game. So rather than the Joker being a part of the Joker virus and showing up, let's just leave him as a hallucination. Let's continue to have Mark Hamill around to do the voice acting, but let's just get rid of the virus plotline that doesn't go anywhere and really doesn't need to be here. There are also going to be plenty of themes where the Arkham Knight is pushing Batman, saying that his way does not work, saying that just apprehending criminals at this level, like Scarecrow and Joker and Mr. Freeze, all these other really high profile people, this crap does not work. You need to kill off these people because they're way too big of a threat. And he's going to be pushing that narrative throughout the entire game. So, rather than there being a literal Joker virus trying to take over the Batman body and then kill people, I think there's enough of a philosophical argument here to have the hallucination of Joker antagonizing Batman and basically saying that the Arkham Knight is right and that he is wasting his life trying to be Batman in this way. So you can kind of still do the same thing, but just alter it slightly and get rid of the virus plot. So these changes I have described really don't change much until we get to Ace Chemicals. That's when all the villains really start to appear and make their first introductions throughout the game. Now, in the original story, we have the Arkham Knight ride up in a helicopter and we have a brief little stare down, and that's basically it until we get into Ace Chemicals. So, since the Arkham Knight is no longer working with Scarecrow, that scene no longer works. Fortunately, though, we did go ahead and replace the Arkham Knight with Deathstroke. And Deathstroke to me seems like a guy who can probably fly a helicopter. Hell, in his boss fight, he was riding around in a tank. Why not just put him in a helicopter too? Makes perfect sense to me. So you do that, he doesn't kill Batman because Scarecrow tells him not to kill Batman, and it makes more sense to me that Deathstroke would be compliant to Scarecrow because this could be a contract stipulation. Scarecrow says, "Do not kill Batman until we kill his legacy." Deathstroke complies. He would also probably be really on board with this idea of killing his legacy because, in a way, Batman ruined his reputation as well back in Arkham Origins. So, Deathstroke would probably be looking at this as like exchanging a legacy for a legacy. So, let's speed up a little bit. Batman goes into Ace Chemicals. It does not go boom. He gets out of Ace Chemicals. We need to introduce the Arkham Knight and the Dark Robin because we have not done that yet. So, whenever Bruce is leaving Ace Chemicals, there should be some radio chatter or a cutscene, something to imply that there are people waiting for him on the outside. Scarecrow and Deathstroke left behind a bunch of militia people so that even if Bruce Wayne were to survive, they are going to gun him down the moment he leaves that building, or capture him more realistically, I guess, since they want to, destroy his legacy. Well, whenever Batman gets out of the building, he does not find this gigantic resistance that he was expecting. Instead, all of the militia members have already been killed. And here is where we get our introduction to the Arkham Knight and our Dark Robin. Turns out they slaughtered all of them and then they ambushed Batman. Now, normally Batman would probably be able to win this, but since there are two of them, it makes sense to me that they could probably overcome him. After all, one of them was trained by Batman, and the other was trained as an assassin by the League of Assassins since birth, and by Talia al Ghul and Ra's al Ghul, no less. So Batman puts up a good fight but does not win. However, the team up of the Arkham Knight and the Dark Robin do not necessarily want to kill Batman immediately either. They do want to still prove their point that they are the better team, that there can be a better Batman, and that Batman's way does not work as it currently stands. So they're just keeping him around until they kill Scarecrow, basically. They let Batman know that they are there and they are going to best him tonight, and in the end, he is going to die. So the next event would be the taking of Barbara Gordon. In the main game, Arkham Knight did it. In this revised story, Deathstroke basically has to do it instead. Now, it makes more sense in the original story since the Arkham Knight already knew who Barbara Gordon was. Deathstroke and Scarecrow don't necessarily know that in the revised version without there being some kind of a leak. So we can just say something along the lines of maybe one of the more tech-savvy militia happened to hack into the comms of Batman. It's not quite as strong as the original Arkham Knight already knowing scenario, but not everything is going to match up quite as well as the original for this revision to work. I do think the revision's a little bit better, at least for me. With that out of the way, we know that Deathstroke has taken Barbara Gordon. Then we go through the same routine of going all around Gotham to try and find Barbara. The next major event is back under the tunnels beneath Gotham whenever he tries to figure out where she is. In the original game, the Arkham Knight ambushed Batman in the tunnels. In this scenario, Deathstroke is the one that's ambushing Batman. Now, considering that the events of Batman Arkham Origins was a very long time ago, years ago, and Deathstroke has won revenge ever since then and has been training for it, it makes sense that all the years of preparation would be enough to temporarily get the upper hand on Batman and surprise him, and at least be good enough to get one shot off on him, similar to how the Arkham Knight did. Alright, so that's updated. Oh, and involving Barbara Gordon being taken, you can also have the Arkham Knight chiming in at times, perhaps in an altercation, another little standoff, a tiff, whatever. He insults Batman for letting this happen to Barbara Gordon. The insult is especially strong because he knows that Batman has fought Deathstroke before, and if he had just killed Deathstroke in the past, this wouldn't be happening now. Another point that he makes here is that this is evidence that Batman's way does not work because it only gets people hurt more in the long run. And then add on top of that that the Arkham Knight's way would have worked here because he would have just killed Deathstroke back in the day, and then he would not be around now to be hurting anyone. He continues to insist that his way works and Batman's does not. And this little conversation, this exchange, would also be a good opportunity to let Batman know that he knows for a fact that this is not the first time that Batman has let down one of his sidekicks before. He plants that seed so that we have that for later to pay off whenever the reveal of Jason Todd happens. Next up, we have Simon Stagg. Almost everything can remain the same inside the blimps. Only thing that really needs to change is in the second blimp. And what needs to change is around the point when the militia are loading up power cells to fuel up the cloudburst. As Batman chases after Simon Stagg in order to try and save him from the militia, this would be a great point to add another altercation with the Arkham Knight and Robin, or at least one of them. So, whenever going after the militia, Batman can begin to see bodies of militia members scattered around. This scenario would remind Batman of his first encounter with the Arkham Knight and the new Robin. Understanding that he is walking into a bad situation while he's rushing after Simon Stagg, he's a little bit more prepared this time. Finally, he catches up only to find that Robin has killed the last of the militia members and also has the intention of killing Simon Stagg for having helped out Deathstroke and Scarecrow and made this whole horrible scenario possible to begin with. This would initiate a hostage situation, and you would have to save Simon Stagg. Now, you've already been shifting around the blimp a bunch with your hacking tool. You could probably use something like that to get Robin off balance, send a container into him, something like that. Anything to separate him from Simon Stagg temporarily. Something he would not have expected instead of a straight up confrontation or a fight, which Batman did not win the first time. After all, if he runs straight into the situation, Simon is probably going to die. So, having knocked the new Robin away from Simon, Simon would probably take advantage of the situation to try fleeing the scene. And then Batman could try to prevent Robin from chasing after him, and this would finally initiate the real fight of this confrontation. So, this wouldn't have to be a full battle. In my mind, you could instead force Batman to have to counter a bunch of Robin's attacks. Whenever there's an opening, you can then make a few strikes at the end of these combos if you are successful in being able to counter everything prior to that. If you try striking before that, either you get hit by Robin or he evades you. That makes sense, and it kind of reminds me of what the Ra's al Ghul fight was like in Batman Arkham City. And having been trained by Ra's, it makes sense that Damian would fight in a similar way. Since this is not a full fight, about midway through, after you've hit Robin enough times, it forces Damian Wayne to retreat, and then Batman finally has a chance to catch up to Scarecrow. And this is really important since Robin is here, it would imply that the Arkham Knight is probably also here and after Scarecrow. Since we are not dealing with the Joker virus plot, we're not going to have to go through that whole scene wherever the Joker temporarily takes over Batman's body. So let's get rid of that, not important anymore. So instead, we have our first encounter with the Arkham Knight by himself. We arrive in time to see the Arkham Knight initiate an attack on Scarecrow, and then we end up breaking it up. And then we have a brief confrontation with the Arkham Knight that doesn't result in either him or Batman winning. Instead, eventually, Scarecrow does the same trick he did in the main game. He breaks away from the airship with the cloudburst being carried away by a helicopter. This time around, Deathstroke would do the same rocket launcher trick that the Arkham Knight did in the original game, and this time it would knock back both Batman and the Arkham Knight, separating them from each other from their fight, and then also giving the Arkham Knight a chance to escape. Next up, we have the fake death of Barbara Gordon. I admit that I do not like how this was executed in the main game. I don't have a problem with them faking her death to get into Batman's head. I just don't really like how it was executed. The problem I have with it is that Scarecrow sounds like it was all completely planned out. Like he knew that Batman was going to be hallucinating that Barbara Gordon killed herself. And that doesn't make any sense if you can't actually control what a person sees with the fear toxin. All you know is that you are going to force someone to see some of their worst fears. That might not have been one of Batman's worst fears. Sure, it's probably on his mind, but you have no control over what a person sees whenever they are in this terrified state. So him acting like it was a certainty does not really make sense to me. So what I'm thinking is that they show Batman a pre-recorded Barbara Gordon in a safe house, similar to what they did initially, And they add on to it that Batman will need to try and hurry, perhaps something like they are going to detonate it if they don't get there in time, implying that she's not going to live if he doesn't make it there within a certain time frame. And then whenever you get close enough, you find out that it was all bullshit and that they were going to blow up the building no matter what you did. So once you're close enough, the building explodes, and then you are led to believe that Barbara Gordon is dead. And there's no body left from the explosion to say whether or not she did. It leaves way less to chance, it still fucks with Batman, and hell, if they got really lucky, they might have injured Batman in the explosion. So yeah, Batman goes on the rest of the game thinking that Barbara is dead just like before, but I feel like this one is a lot more believable, just my opinion. If they really wanted to go the extra mile, just throw some random person in the building to die so there is a body for him to be confused. So in the main game, the next time we encounter the Arkham Knight is when we're taking out that anti-aircraft gun on Founders Island. Whenever we do that, the Arkham Knight and some militia people come to ambush Batman, and then there's that brief standoff between him and Batman before the Arkham Knight just disappears and you are forced to fight the militia. In this revised scenario, we just switch out the Arkham Knight with Deathstroke again, and we just have to tweak the dialogue a little bit. The next big change actually comes after the scene where Batman destroys that anti-aircraft gun and then goes back to the clock tower. Now, at that point in the main game, the original game, Harley Quinn shows up and she reveals that she is breaking out the Joker infected. Since there are not going to be any Joker infected in my revised story, this does not go down the same way. So we could still have Robin going to the movie studios to get to a Bat computer and help Batman look for the Cloudburst. It is, after all, a very urgent situation, and having more than one person looking would make a lot of sense. So we keep the Tim Drake Robin in play like he was in the main story, minus the Joker infected. And then Batman does get an intrusion detection similar to what happens in the main game. Only this time, I want the intrusion to be taking place because Damian Wayne was able to get a few of the defunct members of the League of Assassins to help him break into the movie studios. I understand that this is a Batman hideout, but this is not the Batcave in Wayne Tower, which is super reinforced. I'm sure that the League of Assassins could find a way into the movie studios. Now, in the main game, Harley Quinn was able to get into the movie studios because the Joker infected let her in. In this case, you could make the argument that she was able to get in because of the intrusion by Damian Wayne and the League of Assassins. So my idea here is that the Arkham Robin is sent out to remove Batman's support. So he is targeting Tim Drake. And since Tim Drake is the Robin that replaced Jason after his death, there would be no fond feelings to protect him from what Jason wants. Tim Drake would be just lumped into the same revenge plot as Batman. So, yeah, Jason would probably have no issue with Damian killing Tim. So during this invasion of the movie studios, I would actually like to leave Batman behind, and then we get to pilot Robin for a little while as the League of Assassins situation unravels. Now, whenever the League of Assassins break in, Robin catches on to it and takes up a vantage point, and we have ourselves a little Predator map. We get to take out the assassins using the same scare tactics as we usually do during a Predator map, and then we move forward with the rest of the scenario. Once they're all knocked out, we go back to the Bat computer, and at that point we are confronted by just a couple of other League of Assassin members and Damian Wayne. Now, Tim is able to take down the remaining assassins, and that just leaves Damian Wayne. Here, there won't be any environmental takedown shortcuts. There's not going to be any hitting one button and winning scenarios. Tim will actually have to fight Damian Wayne until he is defeated. In the end, Tim Drake would be victorious and take down the imitation Robin. It will be implied that this situation has also left Tim very exhausted. Tim contacts Batman back at the clock tower to let him know that the situation has been handled and not to respond to the movie studios. Tim intends to take Damian to the GCPD, but that plan does not go through. Our time has come to an end whenever Robin tries to take Damian to the GCPD, and it is while in this transit that Harley Quinn makes her appearance, catches on to the fact that Robin is outside the movie studios, and the gang, along with Harley herself, are able to take down the incapacitated Damian and the wildly exhausted Tim. Now, with that whole scenario over, we go back to Batman at the clock tower. At this point, we finally get the Harley Quinn transmission like we did in the main game. And this is when we find out that she has abducted Tim Drake and is also claiming to have caught Batman's new Robin, which wouldn't actually be his Robin, but it would be Damian. Now we have a Robin hostage situation. Batman responds and goes to the movie studio just like he did before, and now Batman has to go to all the various studios that we unlocked before and go through the similar challenges in order to save both Damian and him. While we're doing this, we find out that Harley Quinn has rigged up the whole place with explosives and she intends to blow up both of the Robins. She sees this as the ultimate tribute to her dead Joker. She intends to do the same thing that the Joker did to Jason Todd, only this time she gets to do it to two Robins. Now, this whole reference to Jason Todd and how he died, this is when we finally get a few of those flashbacks and remind the player who the hell Jason Todd is, remind them that he died at the Joker's hands, and just remind everyone that this is how Batman failed miserably. So again, we're planting that seed for later so that the Jason Todd reveal pays off. So you go around the movie studios, do the unique challenges, disarm all the explosives, and all that is left is to actually free the Robins and face Harley Quinn. Now, unlike before, this does not need to be a press one button and beat her scenario. Harley Quinn will get what she deserves here. After all, she's the new head of that crime organization, and she was able to take down two Robins and find the base of Batman. She's a little bit more competent in this game. She deserves a proper boss battle. Now, you end up winning this altercation. Now, after you beat Harley Quinn, she reveals that she is a very sore loser, and that she has also attached a few extra explosives to the chairs that the Robins are attached to. The detonator for those extra explosives is shot out of her hand, however, before she can blow up both Tim and Damian. Turns out the person who fired that shot was the Arkham Knight. This is where the Arkham Knight makes his proclamation that there are not going to be any more dead Robins being killed by clowns. Holding Batman and Harley Quinn at gunpoint, the Arkham Knight frees Damian Wayne. He then goes on a bit of a rant about how he cannot believe that Batman would actually let this happen again. He states that if he ever needed proof or a reminder that Batman's way does not work, this would be it. He would allow another Robin to be killed in the exact same way. The Arkham Knight says that he will not let that happen, and he goes on to shoot Harley Quinn. Or at least he would have. But Batman steps in front of the gun and takes the bullet, and it hits the Batsuit, so, he still lives. Still, this is an incredibly infuriating situation for the Arkham Knight. Batman would literally die for a person that was going to kill his sidekick, someone that is like one of his sons. But no, Batman would not kill her. Instead, he would die to prevent her from dying. With Batman injured on the ground, the Arkham Knight shoots Harley Quinn for real this time. She's on the ground, bleeding out, but not dead. The Arkham Knight wants her to die slowly. He then takes Damian Wayne out of the movie studio and tells Batman that they need to still find the Cloudburst. And when they do, they're going to show the world who the real heroes are. Batman would use the same injection he used whenever Deathstroke shot him, only this time on Harley Quinn. So, Harley is going to live, but she needs medical attention, and the now free Robin Tim Drake takes her to go get it. And that medical attention would be applied at the GCPD. Then everything plays out about the same way as it did before. What changed next is when Batman goes to see Poison Ivy at the Botanical Gardens. Instead of it just being Batman and Poison Ivy having a conversation, Nightwing would show up and meet Batman there this time. Nightwing would reveal that Tim Drake told him about the additional gunshot, and now that he's been shot a few times tonight, he might not be up to the task of doing all this alone anymore. So Nightwing agrees and shows up to help out Batman. Now, while they make this conversation happen between the two of them and also with Poison Ivy, Cloudburst detonates just like it did in the main story. Only now, we have the duo of Batman and Nightwing. Batman and Nightwing then go to the airships of Simon Stagg. That does not play out the same way it did before, though. Before, there was a Predator map where we had to save Simon again. This time around, we're going to find that the Arkham Knight and Robin actually beat us to the airships because they had the same idea. And when I say Robin in this case, I mean Damian Wayne. It turns out they followed through on their original intention. They spoke with Simon Stagg first, got information about how to defeat the Cloudburst, and then they killed him. This then turns into a bit of a detective mode area in the blimp where we have to go around and try and figure out the evidence and see what Simon would have shown them that would have been critical to defeating the Cloudburst. Together, Nightwing and Batman are able to figure out the same overheating tactic that they did originally, and they are also able to get a power cell to help out with the Batmobile being hit by an EMP. Now, with an idea of how to defeat the Cloudburst and able to use the Batmobile again, we proceed to going back under Gotham like we did initially in the main story, the original story. Instead of the Cloudburst being attached to a tank like it was in the actual story, I would have it in the tunnels. That way you can go ahead and take it out while you're trying to find the plant for Poison Ivy. It's a little bit of plot convenience, but I feel like it works better because I want a different battle than another tank battle. Whenever Batman and Nightwing begin to sabotage the Cloudburst, that's when they find out that they cannot escape because they are ambushed by Deathstroke. This is where we get another Deathstroke boss battle for the first time since Batman Arkham Origins. And it's going to be a lot more reminiscent of that one because I hate the tank battle that you have to do for Deathstroke in, this game. So I want to make this one worth the wait. After all, Deathstroke has been waiting about 10 years or so for revenge, so let's make it a good one. And by a good one, I mean this is not a fight that Batman can win alone. 10 years of preparation to fight one person is a very long time, and Deathstroke is a very good fighter. So it makes sense that this might not be winnable alone for Batman, but fortunately for him, he didn't come here alone. So the only way to do meaningful damage to Deathstroke would be utilizing dual takedowns with Nightwing. I think that would make for a pretty cool battle mechanic, and also Nightwing and Deathstroke have some history themselves, so it'd be kind of cool to see them going at it as well. So in the end, the combination of Nightwing and Batman is able to defeat Deathstroke. And before they're able to apprehend Deathstroke, something a little bit unexpected happens. Deathstroke is essentially bat-clawed away, but not by Batman or Nightwing. Someone else is pulling him away into the distance. The location that Deathstroke gets pulled into then locks down. It can be locked by some sort of a gate or a fence or, something like that so you can still see what's happening, but Batman and Nightwing are not able to stop what is happening to Deathstroke. This is where we find out that it was the Arkham Knight that had grappled and grabbed Deathstroke and pulled him into this locked area. The Arkham Knight would then aim at Deathstroke and shoot him in his remaining eye. And there's nothing Nightwing and Batman can do to stop it. Now, the Arkham Knight can even go as far as to acknowledge that he does not want Deathstroke to heal from that, so he can either set fire to the body or blow him up. He can even reference that that is for Barbara Gordon, someone that would have grown up around and probably still would care about a little bit since she didn't have anything to do with his death. This would also imply to Batman and Nightwing that the Arkham Knight has some sort of a relation to Barbara. And this would also allow us to get a little bit more credibility to the kind of threat that the Arkham Knight is since he just killed Deathstroke. And I feel like that's really needed as the story progresses because in the main game, the actual real game of Batman Arkham Knight, we don't get a whole lot of credibility building moments for the Arkham Knight. It kind of just feels like he loses over and over again. So give him a victory against a very big character. And also, by killing Deathstroke here, we no longer have to deal with all those damn militia side missions that we did in the post game. So, you're welcome. So, with Batman and Nightwing able to successfully sabotage and destroy the Cloudburst, they return to Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is able to clear out all the fear toxin. It leaves her very weakened, but she's not dead, not like she is in the actual game. So, we're going to imply that she would have lived through this. Rather than letting her live through this long term, we would have the Arkham Knight shoot her from a distance. So Poison Ivy still dies, but in a different way. The Arkham Knight can say that she is no longer needed now that the fear toxin is gone, so there's no reason to let the criminal continue to live. He can even taunt Batman by saying he has permanently removed more criminals from Gotham City in one night than Batman has done his entire career. That Gotham is going to be a much safer and better place once Batman is gone for good. Batman would be pretty pissed about losing Poison Ivy, and this is when we could contact Alfred with one of those I need a name scenarios where Alfred just says there's nothing he can find and he's checked about every single source he can think of. The same crap we got in the main story. Next up, we have to go into the mall and save Jim Gordon. This can mostly just go the exact same way. The one thing that we kind of need to remove is the underground Batmobile battle against the Arkham Knight. With these revisions, that scenario doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore. In this scenario, we make it out that the Arkham Knight has also been able to figure out where the Scarecrow was hiding. I mean, if Jim Gordon could do it, why not the Arkham Knight? Using that info, It becomes a race against time. The Batman and the Arkham Knight need to get to Scarecrow, but who will get there first? And eventually their paths are going to cross, and that's when the fight happens. The Arkham Knight would say that he intended to save Batman for after he defeated Scarecrow and the world could see who the better hero was. But instead, the Arkham Knight says he can live with killing Batman first. He can still be the best hero with no competition. I don't see an issue with us keeping this as more of a Predator style map. We just need to swap the militia people out with maybe the League of Assassins courtesy of Damian. Or maybe we could have this be a 2-on-1 fight with the Arkham Knight and Damian against Batman. Regardless, it ends just as the Arkham Knight versus Batman scenario did in the real game. And just like in that main game, we get the reveal that Jason here is the Arkham Knight. And Jason is unable to defeat Batman in the end. Now, Jason gets away just like he did in the main story, but we're not completely done yet. There's no more disappearing into obscurity at the very end of until the very end of the game. We actually have a little bit more ground to cover. And here everything basically stays the same. We figure out that Barbara Gordon is actually alive and that everything was, an act up to that point. She gets swapped out, we save her and then Jim Gordon gets taken hostage. And then eventually we end up as Scarecrow's captive in Arkham Asylum. The only thing I'm really going to change about that captive situation at Arkham Asylum is that we're going to remove the Tim Drake Robin from the final scene. And with Tim Drake at the GCPD taking care of Harley Quinn, the only person that Scarecrow could abduct was Jim Gordon. So, whenever Batman is secured back at Arkham Asylum by Scarecrow, the only other hostage is Jim Gordon. And this part plays out almost the exact same way it does in the actual game. The only difference is we're just getting rid of the whole Joker virus hallucination part where it's fighting for Bruce's mind. Instead, we can go ahead and just jump to Arkham Knight shooting the restraints and freeing Batman. And then, just like before, Scarecrow gets knocked out. Jason takes down the recording, although too late to prevent the world from knowing that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And then this leads to another debate about what to do with Scarecrow. The Arkham Knight, despite the whole revelation that it's Jason Todd and Batman having mixed feelings about what to do with him, have another debate. The Arkham Knight wants to kill Scarecrow, and Batman wants to bring him in like he has always done. This can lead to a final confrontation between Batman and the Arkham Knight, and in the end, whenever Batman does beat the Arkham Knight, they get to finish the conversation that they could not the first time around. You get the genuine apology from Batman. And then he also lets Jason know that this is going to be the very last night of Batman, and that Gotham is still going to need heroes after he is gone. He tells Jason that he feels like he can still be a hero, and he wants him to stop being like the criminals before it's too late, before he can't turn back. He asks Jason to stop killing. In the end, he lets Jason know a little something about the way he handles the whole Robin situation. He believes that Jason can be a better hero than Batman, and that for every single Robin that Batman has ever trained, that was the goal. He never wanted replacements for Batman, he wanted to make heroes that were better than him. So he asks Jason to be better than Batman, and especially to be better than the Arkham Knight. And after this conversation, now Jason Todd can disappear into obscurity to where we don't really know what's going on, but maybe imply that he is going to take up the Red Hood mantle just like he does in the comics. And then we can move forward with the Knightfall Protocol, nothing really to change there, and that is it. We can just add a little something at the end to imply that Tim Drake is taking over as Batman, and after the defeat of the Arkham Knight and the Arkham Robin, Tim Drake sought out Damian Wayne. He understands that Damian has a crap ton of potential despite being very haunted and very tortured by his past with the League of Assassins. Seeing all that potential and wanting to right the wrongs that occurred, Tim Drake takes him in and starts training him as the new Robin. You then have Nightwing continuing to be Nightwing. You have Jason Todd becoming the new Red Hood. Jim Gordon can still run for mayor, and Tim Drake can still continue to plan to propose to Barbara Gordon. It all kind of works out a little bit in the end, and yeah, that is my hypothetical scenario, my little what if everything was just a little bit different for the Arkham Knight video game. Now, like I said earlier, I like the story of Batman Arkham Knight. These are just little things I think would have been kind of cool to be seen done differently, but it's never going to happen, so this is all just for fun. I am ready to shelve Batman Arkham Knight. I think I've done everything that I can do with the base game, and I am okay with retiring it at this point. Maybe someday when I get bored, we'll try out the DLCs for Batman Arkham Knight. But for now, I'm done, I'm good, I've had fun, and it has earned its place on my game case. For anyone who's watching this, thank you for taking a look at the video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you have enjoyed the entire series. The next things I'm going to be working on are Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat 11, Injustice, and Injustice 2. So if those are up your alley, hey, go check those out whenever they're ready. For now, though, I'm done. It has been fun. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.